much of the year. And here's a very clear statement of what's happening. This is by Robert Paulberg, who's one of the establishment. He was involved in Washington in the past, a trade negotiator or something. And he teaches at Wellesley, but he was speaking out at the University of Nebraska. And what he said is conventional agriculture as practiced in states such as Nebraska is under strong attack from people who believe it is unhealthy, unsafe, environmentally unsustainable, and socially unjust. You know, I think a good argument can be made about every aspect of that. These forces want to shift from large-scale, specialized, highly capitalized farming systems to smaller-scale systems that integrate crop and livestock production. Instead of internationally traded foods, they want local foods. And instead of genetically engineered food, they want organic foods. Yes, I know a lot of us here are in that camp, but it's rare you see it put so boldly. And you know, he has a problem with this. Here's the basis of our food system in this country: the feed for our cows, the sweetening for our sodas, sweetening for almost everything we eat in the store, the monocultures of genetically modified corn, 90 million acres of it in this country. They're first dosed with fertilizer, a very high nitrogen fertilizer, and hydrous ammonia, which is very toxic to the soil organisms. Herbicides, first usually an atrazine, which is very dangerous herbicide, and then since most of it's Roundup ready, it's sprayed once or more times with Roundup herbicide, which has some very bad effects in the soil. Again, all of these things are bad for the soil ecosystem, which we'll see in a few minutes is very important. The tillage is bad for the soil ecosystem, and it nearly is almost no biodiversity. And some of the pesticides they use are the ones that are most implicated in the disappearance of bees. And we do that all because we're in the age, we're right about in here, in the middle of the oil age. But most of us probably have a grandmother or great-grandmother who was alive before the oil age. And many of us have children or grandchildren will be alive after the oil age. We wouldn't be using oil, wouldn't be bringing food from China. We wouldn't be making synthetic fertilizers if oil weren't available and cheap, and we hadn't for a long time understood that it was going to be very dangerous if we kept burning it. And you know, just, oh, forget that. But food is our energy source. We are run on solar power. Solar is stored in the food. If we could run on gasoline, it would take just a little over a cup of gasoline a day to keep us going. You know, put that in a car, it might go for a few minutes. But put that much energy in you go for 24 hours. And yet, in many parts of our food system, it takes 2.5 gallons of energy equivalent for processing, packaging, shipping, retailing, as well as all the energy used in growing and harvesting to produce just this much. It's a losing proposition. But yet you can grow corn very well. This is at the Rodale Institute in northeast Pennsylvania, where they've developed this wonderful 5-year rotation. It requires only one tillage operation and one application of compost in all those 5 years. They let the plants do the work. This is an elegant example. They use winter hairy vetch, which is a cover crop grown in the winter, which is a legume, so it adds nitrogen to the soil. When they're ready to plant the corn, they roll the legume, the vetch down in a way that kills it so it doesn't grow anymore. No chemicals, just a mechanical thing. And then they split seed the corn. So you have this vetch, which is a fertilizer and a pest and an herbicide, in effect, without any fossil fuel, solar power. It's really elegant. And it's the kind of, and they've done this for 30 years, comparing it with conventional, and they found that the organic outproduces the conventional, especially in bad years, in stressful environment, stressful weather years. That it produces 3 times the profit on organic per acre, uses fewer energy inputs, and creates less greenhouse gases. So we see what that Paulberg thinks we want. This is what the United Nations thinks in their Trade and Environment Report. Wake up before it's too late. Make agriculture truly sustainable now for food security in a changing climate. Farming in rich and poor countries alike should shift from monoculture to greater varieties of crops, reduce use of fertilizers and other inputs, greater support for small-scale farmers, and more locally focused production and consumption of foods, which is exactly what's happening in Connecticut right now. It's what NOFA's been pushing for the last 40 years, And you know that between 2007 and 2012, many of them organic or farmers pledge or certainly low input crops, just growing for retail. Another voice from the United Nations: to feed 9 billion people in 2050, we urgently need to adopt the most efficient farming technologies available. And today's scientific evidence demonstrates that agroecological methods, which are very close to organic, very similar, very much local-based, resource-conserving methods, outperform the use of chemical fertilizers in boosting food production in regions where the hungry live. He really believes that it is people on the land that are the most productive. Those big farms are not productive at all in terms of what it takes to get that out of it. But yet in China, they're moving tens or hundreds of millions of people off of the land into these skyscrapers in the city. And there's this tradition, we talked about farmers of 40 centuries. This is that community garden in New Haven, which is operated, garden tended by elderly Chinese whose children are going to Yale at graduate school, and they're watching the grandchildren. But you can see that this is a wonderful garden. It's across from the Yale Divinity School. Very easy to find, very beautiful, productive most of the year, and just incredible variety of crops. And you can see, thousands of years of culture and knowledge about plants and food in this little garden. So our food choices are some of the most powerful tools we have. We do it 3 times a day. Food is our most important connection with the earth after air and water. So we want to work with nature. Nature moves in 4 conditions. Towards greater biodiversity, which is so important for it to provide increased resilience to environmental insult, like climate change. The greater biodiversity also does increase organic matter, which stores carbon and fights climate change. And one of the exciting places we're seeing that now is in the soil. With good kind of agriculture, good kind of grazing and animals, we can really put that carbon into the soil where it will stay instead of in the atmosphere. You have more diversity, so you have greater structural complexity. One organism's waste is food for another organism, which is food for another organism. It just keeps going round and round. Everything is cycled. And the end result is this increased metabolic stability, which is really health. It doesn't want to change. And all the things we see about organic systems, long-term tests, it's that resistance to environmental insult, that flexibility, that resilience, which is what makes them work. And there's this wonderful unity of things when we see it. Exciting information about the rhizosphere, this area around the roots, which has billions and billions of living things in each little handful of soil. And the roots and the organisms are creating all these glues which hold the soil together, fungi and bacteria. And that's where we're storing the carbon. If you have more of those animals, more of those organisms in the soil, and more roots on the plants, you can put more of that carbon into the soil, and that's what people are working on. We see in our intestines the same kind of microbiome, the organisms in our intestines. In both places, they're healthier if they're more biodiverse. And our food system, the industrial agriculture, and the food in the supermarket tends to push it in the other direction, less diverse. And it's actually this connection which may make local maybe one of the strongest arguments for local food, is they're really connected to our local environment. And if you haven't heard of her, I'd check out Dr. Daphne Miller. She's from San Francisco. She wrote a book called Pharmacology. She's a doctor, and she explored, she went to visit farms and see what she could learn from organic farms about treating her patients in San Francisco. Wonderful, fascinating book. And just a little of it, the soil, we can't live without soil. Civilization destroys its soil, dies. And it's been a problem as long as I've been involved in agriculture, but we keep learning more, and now there's a lot of people doing really good education about what we really want to do with the soil is to disturb it as little as possible and keep it covered with a diversity of growing plants. And we see the plant roots and all these organisms create this structure, which is the tilt, the structure of the soil, which allows organisms, water and air, to move around, allows the roots to easily penetrate and get the nutrients they need. We're fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. If you haven't read Wendell Berry, read from anything he wrote. It's wonderful. And the idea is we need to think about externalities. You know, our food system is completely driven by the dollar, by looking for profit. I mean, they're right now tearing up the prairie in the Midwest in the search of another few dollars per acre for growing corn. It is really awful. But the externalities of that growing corn are a changed climate, are dead zones at the top of New Orleans, are polluted wells, are destroyed biodiversity of the soil, dead bees, they're all connected there. And this food, and then it ends up in food like this, which has the externality of making people sick. So we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world because we can't do preventative care. Although there's enormous work on that, and people understanding that if you eat fruits and vegetables, you're likely to feel better and be healthier than if you eat this crap. And remember how nature went towards more ecosystem, more biodiversity? Forget to clean your gutter. We're already on the way to a forest. You know, incredible bunch of organisms in there. So that trend of the Earth creates the Earth's biocapacity. How much biodiversity it is, how many forests, the cropland, the water, the ability to absorb wastes. The biggest waste we're worried about now are the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and nitrous oxides. And then the health of the fisheries. How are they doing? Well, you know, we get this dose of sunlight every year. We can grow so much plants, create so much oxygen, you know, absorb so much waste. This is what one planet can do. In 1961, all the people on the planet were using half of the biocapacity of the Earth. We get to 1987, not that long ago for some of us old folks, we're using all of it. There are more people, but we need more stuff, more cars, more TVs, more computers, whatever it was we were needing, and more discos, 1987. You go to 2004, we're at an Earth and a quarter. 2012, Earth and a half. There's not an extra Earth out, half an Earth out there for us to get the resources. So that's going to have some effect. This is our choice. We're going to calm down and live on our planet, which is the basic thing we need to do, is to be content within our possibilities, rather than going to that. And what are the effects of those? Oh, just to show where we are, another piece of this. This is that, again, that biocapacity, if it were divided equally among all the people on the planet. And each of these bars is an individual country, and you see the two countries up here. Then the second one is the United States, up there almost to 10 hectares per person, when there's only less than 2 hectares per person on the planet. And we're only exceeded by the United Arab Emirates, somewhat old data. But, you know, that's where they build indoor ski slopes in the desert tropics. And, you know, we go to the doctor, he'll check our vital signs. In 2009, environmental scientists asked, what are the Earth's vital signs? You know, this is what we're happening. We're using more than there is. What's it doing to the planet? And this is what they found out. This is the safe zone. Around the edge are these vital signs: freshwater use, land use, biodiversity, etc. And they found 3 of them way outside the safe zone. Climate change, which I think is all here, we all understand. The nitrogen cycle, we've doubled the global flow of nitrogen. Excess nitrogen causes weedy growth, causes insect feeding, causes eutrophication of saltwater bodies. And then we've lost biodiversity loss, which is incredible. We may be in the 6th great extinction period. And these are all interrelated. You know, the nitrogen causes the biodiversity loss. The nitrogen use causes greater climate change. The climate change causes biodiversity loss. And they're all connected to the way we eat and the way we care for our land. And yet, we go into the local garden center, and what do we find? Bags full of 29% nitrogen to dump on your lawn. And, you know, shelf after shelf of these biodiversity eliminators. Roundup is evil stuff. I mean, I don't like talking those terms, but I think it is. And then this is what we get from that system, which uses so much nitrogen. so much change, it's caused so much climate change. This is what they want we should eat. One of the things I'm paying attention to now is that how many of these chains that are feeding people this way, advertising this food, which of course is based on the subsidies that we provide to the large-scale growers of corn, which makes their products really cheap for the people who are running feedlots, the people who are making buns, people who are doing any of this stuff. People who are making soda. Soda is basically a bunch of subsidies and environmental externalities to provide profit to Warren Buffett, who owns it. But if we look at beyond that, we have beef from feedlots, which are maybe even in different countries. In one sandwich, we have the bacon from the confined animal feeding operation pigs. We have cheese from industrial dairy. It's not from a nice little dairy down the street. You can't make that American cheese crap cheap enough, doing it well. And all these animals are eating GMO corn and soy and alfalfa. So we have a food system that's really based on, and all these are bred to be resistant to Roundup, so we have a food system that's based on selling more Roundup. And we've discovered there are lots of extra Roundup in our food, and Roundup is a chelator, which means it holds on to elements in our body, in our intestines, in the soil. It changes the ecosystems, it changes microbiomes. It's a bad actor. And for a long time it's been like this, where you have a few farmers at the bottom, you have 300 billion consumers at the top, and you have a very few food companies, processors and distributors for the food. It's amazing, and that's shrinking even more and more when the largest pork producer in China bought the largest pork producer in this country, in part to greenwash their pork, which may have problems with it in China because their soil is polluted, their water is polluted, so they can use this American name to make it look good, and then eventually they'll probably be shipping us that pork, and it means we're directly competing with the bigger people in China for the price of pork. The International Organic Movement has these principles: health, ecology, fairness, and care. Something great to work on. One of the things that the NOFA Interstate region has done, which is really good, is to be one of the founders of the Agricultural Justice Project, which has just certified its first agri-justice certified farm over in Ithaca, New York. But looking at the whole, all the way the workers are treated, their pay. I think we should think about widespread knowledge in our food. We've basically been creating ignorance for 40 years because we've got all this stuff to hide, GMOs, synthetic ingredients, processing things. We really want democratic control of our food supply. We may have to make it local to do that. We want a maximum solar energy use because ideally we wouldn't burn any more fossil fuels from this point on. And we want strong communities. This is a couple of communities I was fortunate enough to be connected with last year. This is a group of people who worked on the GMO labeling bill in Connecticut, which was really successful, and such a great group of people, and so much energy from those people beginning to feel their democratic oats and really caring about what they eat and what they feed their children. And then this was a group working with Knox Parks Foundation in Hartford, which is creating a 3-acre farm on the north end of Hartford. We were there to plant garlic last fall. Such great people. And we want knowledge, but the food industry is very good at hiding that. You'd think these chickens, the eggs in these boxes had something to do with the outside and the grass. These eggs come from chickens that have never seen the light of day. There have been 5 billion of them in buildings in eastern Connecticut. And then they take a ride down 95 to New Jersey to be washed and sorted and packed before they come back here, and they're wonderful Connecticut eggs. There's a lot of people who think we shouldn't be solar-powered beings anymore. We should be electricity-powered beings. They want to grow vegetables for the dollar signs they see using artificial light inside buildings. This is in Milwaukee. They're working on one in Bridgeport. The Yukon is involved with it. There's people who sell shipping containers, all designed so you can grow food inside. But there's no sunlight. Does the food that's grown without sunlight have the same quality as the food that's grown outdoors in the light of the sun? It may be scientifically regulated so it gets the most important things. Organic agriculture, this is from the USDA. Ecological production management system that promotes and enhances biodiversity, biological cycles, and soil biological activity. based on minimal use of our farm inputs and a management practice that restore, maintain, and enhance ecological harmony. The primary goal is to optimize the health and productivity of interdependent communities of soil life, plants, animals, and people. If the corn's in one place, the animals are in somewhere else, and the nutrients are coming from overseas, it's not a community. But the exciting thing in Connecticut is that so many people, so many communities are working on this. So what can you do? Grow some food, buy from local farmers, eat less meat, eat better meat if you're going to eat meat. We eat very little meat now, we eat some fish. For years, we only ate meat if we knew who bought it, if we raised it, or if we raised it. But that's a really good ethical decision. Join a CSA, Community Support Agriculture. We support a farmer up front and then enjoy the fruits of that farm's produce for the year. Visit farmers markets regularly. Join or donate to an organization working on food, and there's so many of those in Connecticut. Churches, schools, individuals, land trusts. It's just the explosion in the last decade of interest in food and work on food in Connecticut is incredible. And then a school or community garden, that's also happening. There's, some cities have 30, I think in Bridgeport, they have 30 school gardens, and then maybe 20 community gardens. And then talk to your elected officials. It's not going to happen. The USDA, the industrial food system, is not going to change anything. We got to do it. So thank you.